Stranger Things. The Complete Lore Explained Part 2. Welcome back as we complete our deep dive into the mysterious world of Stranger Things. The show has built one of the most intricate mythologies in modern television, with layers of government conspiracies, interdimensional physics, and connections that span decades. Today, we complete our journey together, uncovering character development, hidden meanings, and what makes Stranger Things the world so many people have fallen in love with. Let's get strange. The symbolism of Christmas lights. Communication across the void. The Christmas lights from Season 1 are one of the show's most iconic visual elements, and they deserve deeper analysis as symbols of communication, hope, and the refusal to accept loss. When Will is trapped in the Upside Down, he discovers he can manipulate lights in the normal world. The mechanism isn't fully explained. Is it electromagnetic manipulation? Psychic connection? The effect of the Upside Down bleeding through? Whatever the cause, it creates a bridge between dimensions. Joyce's decision to cover her house in Christmas lights and paint letters on the wall is simultaneously desperate and brilliant. She creates a communication system from nothing, turning her home into a Ouija board connected to another dimension. The colorful lights strung through her home transform domestic space into a portal, not for physical travel but for connection. The lights represent several key themes. First, maternal intuition and determination. Joyce knows Will is alive when everyone else has given up. She's willing to look crazy, to destroy her home, to spend money she doesn't have on lights because she trusts what she feels. The lights are manifestation of a mother's love reaching across impossible distances. Second, they represent improvisation and resourcefulness. Joyce doesn't have government equipment or scientific knowledge. She has Christmas lights and desperate determination. She creates technology from household objects and primal need. This is working-class innovation, using what's available because that's all you have. Third, the lights symbolize hope refusing to die. In darkness, both literal, the Upside Down, and metaphorical, despair, light persists. Even from another dimension, Will can make lights glow. Even across the void, connection is possible. The lights are proof that love can bridge any distance. The visual of Joyce's house covered in lights, strings crossing the walls, ceiling, and floor in chaotic patterns, looks like neurons firing, like a brain trying to make connections. The house becomes a living mind trying to touch another mind across dimensional boundaries. The lights also create one of the show's most emotionally powerful moments. When Joyce finally gets clear communication from Will, seeing RUN spelled out in flickering bulbs, it's heartbreaking because she's found her son, but he's in danger she can't immediately stop. The lights bring connection but also helplessness. The Christmas light scene has become culturally iconic. Cosplayers recreate Joyce's light-covered living room. Fans make merchandise. It's the visual instantly associated with Stranger Things. This popularity makes sense because the image captures the show's essence. Desperate love, supernatural mystery, and the insistence that connection matters more than anything. Technically, the lights shouldn't work. There's no scientific explanation for how Will can manipulate electricity from another dimension. But emotionally and thematically, they're perfect. Love finds a way. Hope creates channels where none should exist. Mothers don't accept their children's deaths even when everyone insists it's reality. The lights return occasionally in later seasons, usually as references or small moments, but never quite as powerfully as that first season. That's appropriate. Lightning in a bottle, or in this case, Christmas lights, can't be perfectly replicated. But that original image remains. Joyce Byers, standing in her light-covered living room, refusing to give up, creating a miracle through sheer force of love and determination. Hopper's cabin. Sanctuary and prison. Hopper's cabin in the woods serves as Eleven's home in Season 2, and its role as both sanctuary and prison explores themes of protection versus control, safety versus freedom. The cabin is objectively a good solution to an impossible problem. Eleven is hunted by the government and dangerous if discovered. The cabin keeps her hidden and safe. Hopper stocks it with food, especially Eggos, sets up entertainment, creates a space where she can live. He's trying to give her as normal a life as possible under abnormal circumstances. But from Eleven's perspective, the cabin is also a prison. She's traded one form of captivity, Hawkins' lab, for another, isolation in the woods. She has more freedom than before and someone who genuinely cares about her. But she's still trapped, still denied basic experiences like seeing friends or going to school. The cabin represents Hopper's trauma projection. He lost Sarah and couldn't protect her from cancer. Now he has Elle, and he's overcompensating by controlling everything he can. The strict rules, the monitoring, the refusal to let her leave. It's not just practical security. It's a grieving father trying to prevent loss by never letting the child out of his sight. Their arguments in Season 2 are realistic parent-child conflicts amplified by extraordinary circumstances. Elle wants independence, Hopper wants safety. Both have valid points. Hopper's fear is justified. She really is in danger. Elle's frustration is justified. She's a person who deserves autonomy and connection. There's no perfect answer. The cabin also symbolizes chosen family. Hopper creates a home for Elle not because he's obligated but because he chooses to parent her. He learns to braid her hair, poorly, attempts to talk about feelings, awkwardly, and tries to balance discipline with affection. The cabin becomes a site of family formation, imperfect but real. When Elle breaks the rules and visits her mother, then later finds Callie, she's asserting her need for identity beyond what Hopper can provide. She needs her history, her biological family, her power's origins. The cabin, as safe as it is, can't give her everything she needs. Their reconciliation, when Hopper admits he was wrong and Elle accepts his apology, is one of the show's best parent-child moments. Hopper acknowledges he was controlling her out of fear. Elle acknowledges she understands why. They renegotiate their relationship into something healthier. By Season 3, the cabin has evolved. Elle and Hopper have found better balance. She has more freedom, he has more trust. The cabin is still their home but feels less like a prison. Then Hopper dies, and the cabin becomes a monument to their family. Empty, haunted by loss. Season 4 shows Elle returning to the ruined cabin, now dilapidated and overgrown. She finds Hopper's shirt, his notes, evidence of their life together. The cabin has become a memory palace, a shrine to the father she lost. When she learns he's alive, the cabin represents hope. They can rebuild not just the structure but their family. The cabin's journey mirrors Elle's journey. From prison to home to abandoned ruin to symbol of hope. It's remarkable how much emotional weight a simple structure carries. But that's what homes do. They hold our lives, our relationships, our transformations. The cabin isn't just a location. It's the physical manifestation of Elle learning what family means. The power dynamics, electricity, magnetism, and interdimensional physics. Let's dive deeper into the actual mechanics of how the Upside Down interacts with our world, because the show's use of electricity and magnetism reveals crucial lore about dimensional barriers. From the very beginning, electrical disturbances signal the Upside Down's presence. Lights flicker when the Demogorgon is near. Electronics malfunction. Compasses spin wildly, pointing toward the gate instead of magnetic north. These aren't random effects. They're evidence of how dimensional rifts disrupt electromagnetic fields. The science is actually grounded in theoretical physics. Electromagnetic radiation is one of the fundamental forces of our universe. If another dimension exists at a different vibrational frequency or in a different phase of spacetime, the interaction point would create electromagnetic chaos. The Upside Down doesn't just occupy different space. It operates on different physical principles that conflict with our reality's laws. Lucas's compass going haywire is the first scientific clue the kids used to locate the gate. The massive energy expenditure required to maintain a dimensional rift creates a powerful electromagnetic signature. The mother gate essentially acts as a massive electromagnet, distorting the field for miles around. This explains why Hawkins specifically, once the gate opens, the town becomes the center of an electromagnetic distortion zone. The Russians needed massive machines to generate enough power to open their own gate. We see those huge laser-like devices in Season 3, drawing enormous amounts of electricity from the mall and surrounding infrastructure. This confirms that bridging dimensions requires tremendous energy. You're literally tearing a hole in reality, forcing two incompatible physical systems to touch. The sensory deprivation tanks work on similar principles. By reducing external electromagnetic stimulation, what our senses detect, Eleven's consciousness can extend beyond normal limits. She's essentially tuning into different frequencies, accessing information from locations far away. When she touches the Demogorgon in the void, she creates a psychic bridge that becomes physical when combined with her telekinetic powers. This also explains Will's communication through lights. Electricity flows through our dimension normally, but in the Upside Down, that same current exists in a different state. Will can manipulate the electrical current in the Upside Down version of his house, and that manipulation crosses the dimensional barrier to affect the lights in Joyce's actual house. He's not creating electricity, he's redirecting it across dimensions. The consistent electrical theme throughout the show isn't just aesthetic. It's the show's explanation for how dimensions interact. Electromagnetic fields are the common ground, the medium through which incompatible realities can influence each other. Every flickering light, every spinning compass, every electronic malfunction is evidence of reality breaking down at the seams. Vecna's clock symbol ties into this too. Clocks are mechanical or electronic devices measuring time through regular oscillations, electromagnetic pulses counting seconds. When the grandfather clock appears to his victims, it might represent time itself distorting, the regular oscillation of reality being disrupted by his presence. Season 5 will likely explore this further. If the goal is to permanently seal the dimensions, they'll need to understand and possibly reverse the electromagnetic distortion. Perhaps they'll need to generate equal and opposite energy to close the gates, or find a way to restore electromagnetic stability to Hawkins. Karen Wheeler, the suburban mother's invisible tragedy. Karen Wheeler deserves deeper analysis as a character who represents the invisible emotional labor and quiet desperation of suburban motherhood, and how proximity to heroism highlights ordinary unhappiness. Karen appears to have everything: attractive husband, nice house, healthy children, comfortable life. But Season 3 reveals the cracks when she almost has an affair with Billy. This isn't random character assassination. It's the show acknowledging that Karen is drowning in suburban ennui and desperately seeking something to make her feel alive. Think about Karen's life. Her husband is emotionally absent, more interested in television and complaining than in actual conversation. Her daughter is pulling away, involved in dangerous situations Karen senses but can't access. Her son is fighting literal monsters, but she thinks he's just being a difficult teenager. She does all the emotional work of the family, cooking, organizing, mediating, while being fundamentally alone in her own home. The Billy attraction isn't really about Billy. He's young, attentive, and makes her feel seen in a way Ted hasn't in years. When Billy looks at her at the pool, flirts with her, suggests meeting at the motel, it's the first time in years someone has seen her as a person with desires rather than just as mom or wife. The temptation isn't sexual as much as it's about being recognized as human. Karen's decision not to meet Billy, her moment of looking at her family and choosing them, is one of the show's quieter heroic moments. She sacrifices her chance at feeling alive to maintain her family's stability. It's not dramatic, there's no fight scene or power display, but it's a real moral choice with real stakes. The tragedy is that her family never knows about this moment. Nancy is off investigating conspiracies, Mike is saving the world, Ted is watching TV. Karen makes this sacrifice alone, without recognition or support, because that's what mothers do. The invisible emotional labor continues. Karen also represents the parent who's trying but can't break through. She notices Nancy's stress and tries to connect, but Nancy can't tell her the truth. She worries about Mike but can't understand what's really happening. She's doing everything right according to the parenting handbook, but the handbook doesn't cover interdimensional monsters. There's a generational element too. Karen came of age in the 60s, possibly with her own dreams and ambitions, but by the 80s she settled into conventional suburban motherhood. She represents roads not taken, potential unfulfilled, the cost women paid for family stability. The show doesn't mock Karen. It treats her situation with empathy while also showing its limitations. She's trapped not by external forces but by social expectations and her own choices. She could leave Ted, could insist on being told the truth, could rebel against her role, but she doesn't, because the cost would be her family's stability. Karen Wheeler will probably never know her children are heroes. She'll never understand that while she was folding laundry and making dinners, they were literally saving the world. Her sacrifices, the emotional labor, the suppressed desires, the quiet daily heroism of keeping a family functional, will remain invisible. But here's what's profound. The kids can only be heroes because Karen maintains the home base. She provides stability, routine, and normalcy that allows them to venture into darkness, knowing they have somewhere safe to return. Her invisible labor enables their visible heroism. Karen Wheeler represents millions of parents, especially mothers, who do essential work that goes unrecognized. The show honors this by making her sympathetic and complex rather than a caricature. She deserves better than Ted Wheeler, but she also deserves recognition that her work matters. The meaning of Friends Don't Lie, Truth as Foundation. Friends Don't Lie is the party's core principle, introduced in Season 1 and repeated throughout the series. Let's unpack why this simple phrase carries such philosophical and emotional weight. The phrase comes from Mike, establishing a moral framework for the group's friendship. It's not just about honesty, it's about trust as the foundation of connection. In a world where government agencies lie, where reality itself seems uncertain, where adults can't be relied upon to believe or help, the kids create their own code. We tell each other the truth, always. This becomes complicated when Eleven lies about destroying the gate in Season 2. She's trying to protect them, but the lie damages Mike's trust. The resolution isn't that lying is always wrong. It's that trust requires honesty even when truth is hard. Eleven learns that real relationships survive difficult truths better than comfortable lies. The phrase also establishes Eleven's moral education. She was raised in a lab where everyone lied. Brenner lied about being her father, about her mother, about everything. Friends Don't Lie teaches her that real relationships work differently. Trust is earned through honesty, not through control and deception. But the show also explores the ethics of truth-telling. Sometimes characters lie to protect each other. Sometimes they keep secrets because sharing would cause harm. The absolutism of Friends Don't Lie gets tested by reality's complexity. The lesson evolves. Friends tell each other the truth when it matters, even when it's hard, but honesty serves connection, not just principle. The phrase takes on new meaning in Season 4 with Max's isolation. She lies about being okay, pushes her friends away, hides her depression and suicidal thoughts. The violation of Friends Don't Lie makes her vulnerable to Vecna. Isolation is the lie that nearly kills her. Her survival requires honest confession of her pain, both to herself and to Lucas. Friends Don't Lie also contrasts with the adult world of necessary lies. Hopper lies to protect Eleven. Owens lies to maintain secrecy. The government lies constantly. The kids recognize these lies as corrupting. They see how adult deception creates the very problems everyone faces. Their insistence on honesty is rebellion against systemic dishonesty. There's developmental psychology here too. Children naturally understand moral absolutes. Lying is bad. Telling truth is good. As they grow into adolescence, they encounter moral complexity. Sometimes lying protects people, sometimes truth causes harm. The show tracks this development by testing the principle repeatedly. By Season 4, the phrase has evolved in practice if not in principle. The characters understand that Friends Don't Lie means friends are honest about what matters, and friends don't deceive to manipulate. It's not about perfect honesty but about fundamental trust and the willingness to be vulnerable with each other. The phrase also functions as the show's thesis about how to fight evil. The Upside Down operates through deception. The Mind Flayer hides its presence. Vecna manipulates perception. Everything about that dimension is false and corrupted. Truth, seeing reality clearly, naming what's happening, refusing to accept comfortable lies, is the first defense against corruption. Friends Don't Lie is the antibody against the virus of the Upside Down's deception. As long as the characters maintain honest connection with each other, As long as they refuse to accept lies even when truth is terrifying, they maintain their humanity and their resistance. It's a simple phrase that children can understand, but it contains sophisticated moral philosophy. Trust requires honesty, connection requires vulnerability, and truth, however difficult, is the foundation of any relationship worth having. Dart, pet, monster, and the limits of domestication. Dustin's relationship with Dart, the baby demo dog he tries to raise as a pet, explores fascinating questions about nature versus nurture, the possibility of redemption, and whether monsters can be tamed through love. When Dustin finds the slug-like creature, he's immediately excited. He's always wanted a pet, and here's something unique, special, his own discovery. He names it D'Artagnan after a musketeer, a warrior, but one with honor and loyalty. Dustin projects his hopes onto this creature. Maybe it can be different. Maybe it can be good. Dustin's attempt to domesticate Dart mirrors humanity's historical relationship with dangerous animals. We've tamed wolves into dogs, wildcats into house cats. Dustin believes love and proper care can overcome biological programming. He feeds Dart, keeps him warm, builds him a habitat. He's trying to be a good pet owner to a creature that's fundamentally not a pet. The horror comes when Dart grows rapidly and eats Dustin's cat, Muse. This isn't just shock value. It's the moment when Dustin confronts that love doesn't change nature. Dart didn't eat Muse out of malice. He's a predator and Muse was prey. Dart's nature is to consume. No amount of affection changes his biological imperatives. Dustin's devastation is real. He feels betrayed, but also guilty. He brought this creature into his home, and it killed his pet. He endangered his mother. His optimism that he could make Dart different was proven wrong. But was he naive or compassionate? Is hope for redemption always foolish, or is it what makes us human? The brilliant twist comes later when Dart recognizes Dustin in the tunnels. Despite joining the Demodog pack, despite being part of the Mind Flayer's hive mind, some part of Dart remembers Dustin. When Dustin offers him 3 Musketeers candy bars, establishing another Musketeer connection, Dart accepts and lets the party pass. Then he sacrifices himself to hold off the other Demodogs. This moment is profound. Dart chooses connection over hive mind, loyalty over biological programming. Dustin's love didn't make Dart safe or domesticated, but it created a relationship that mattered at the crucial moment. Dart couldn't be a pet, but he could be something more complicated. A creature torn between 2 worlds, ultimately choosing the person who showed him kindness. Dart represents the show's question about monsters. Are they evil by nature or by circumstance? The Demogorgons serve the Mind Flayer, but do they have individual consciousness? Can creatures created for destruction choose differently? Dart suggests yes, individual connection can compete with hive mind control at least momentarily. Dustin naming the creature matters. Names create identity, relationship, recognition. Dart isn't just Demodog number 7. He's D'Artagnan, a musketeer, someone with identity and purpose. The name creates the space for a relationship to exist. There's also a lesson about accepting nature while still believing in connection. Dart couldn't be domesticated in the traditional sense, couldn't become safe or reliable. But Dustin's compassion created a bond that proved meaningful in the moment that mattered. Sometimes relationships with dangerous things don't make them safe, they just make them complicated. Dart's death protecting the party is tragic because it suggests that even within the hive mind, individuality isn't completely erased. Dart chose to protect Dustin at the cost of his own life. That choice came from somewhere, from memory of kindness, from gratitude, from whatever passes for love in a creature designed to be a weapon. Dustin keeps the toy from Halloween that he used to distract Dart, a ghost trap from Ghostbusters. It's a memorial to a weird, tragic friendship with something that couldn't be kept but mattered anyway. Dart couldn't be saved, but he wasn't forgotten. The Russian prison. Dehumanization and Hopper's second death. The Russian prison arc in Season 4 deserves analysis as a descent into hell narrative that strips Hopper to his essence and forces him to confront what he's willing to do to survive. When Hopper is captured and sent to Kamchatka, He enters a nightmare deliberately designed to destroy human dignity. The prison isn't just containment, it's psychological warfare. Prisoners are numbered, not named. They're starved, frozen, worked to death. They're forced to fight demogorgons for the guards' entertainment. It's the Gulag system taken to its most brutal extreme. Hopper's imprisonment mirrors his emotional state before the capture. He was already trapped, already isolated, already fighting just to survive. The physical prison externalizes his internal state. He's been in prison since Sarah died. Russia just made it literal. The forced labor in freezing conditions breaks men quickly. Hopper survives through sheer stubbornness and the memory of Eleven and Joyce. But survival comes at a cost. He has to become harder, crueler, more violent. The prison strips away his humanity piece by piece, and he has to choose how much to lose. His alliance with Dmitri Enzo provides moral complexity. Dmitri is a guard who hates the system, who wants to escape and reunite with his son. He's another good man trapped in an evil machine. Their partnership shows that even in the worst circumstances, alliance and trust can exist. The Demogorgon fights are gladiatorial horror. Prisoners are sent into the arena with improvised weapons to fight creatures from another dimension while guards watch and bet. It's entertainment through suffering, the complete objectification of human life. Hopper has to fight and kill to survive, becoming the warrior he spent years trying not to be. The symbolism is clear. Hopper died at Starcourt and went to hell. The prison is his purgatory, where he's tested and refined. He has to lose everything again. Freedom, dignity, hope, to understand what actually matters. Only after being completely broken can he be rebuilt into who he needs to be. His escape requires help from Joyce and Murray. He can't save himself alone. After seasons of being the protector, Hopper must accept being rescued. This reversal is crucial for his character growth. He's not the lone hero. He's part of a team, dependent on others' love and effort. The reunion with Joyce after the prison escape is one of the show's most cathartic moments. Hopper has been through literal hell, and Joyce came to Russia to save him. Their kiss isn't just romantic. It's two traumatized people finding each other again. Proof that love persists even through death and imprisonment and impossible distance. Hopper's time in Russia also connects him directly to the geopolitical scope of the crisis. He's no longer just Hawkins' chief. He's been inside the Soviet program, seen their experiments, understands the global scale of the threat. His knowledge becomes crucial strategic intelligence. The prison strips Hopper down to ask, who is Jim Hopper without his badge, his authority, his protector role? The answer: he's a survivor who refuses to quit, who maintains loyalty even in hell, who believes people are worth fighting for even after everything he's lost. That's who he is at his core. The Byler Debate. Subtext, interpretation, and queer reading. We need to address the Byler phenomenon, the fan interpretation that has romantic feelings for Mike, because it raises important questions about representation, subtext, and how audiences read queer narratives into texts. Let's be clear about what the show has confirmed. Will struggles with identity and feeling different. He's uncomfortable when his friends discuss romantic interests in girls. His painting for Mike is deeply personal and emotional. In Season 4, Jonathan gently tells Will he'll accept and love him no matter what, in a scene that reads as a coming-out moment without explicit confirmation. Many viewers interpret these elements as Will being gay and having unrealized feelings for Mike. The evidence is substantial. His discomfort with heterosexual expectations, his emotional investment in Mike specifically, the way he's been othered since Season 1, being called slurs, being targeted for being different, and the show's careful attention to his isolation as friends pair off romantically. But here's what makes this complex. The show has neither confirmed nor denied this interpretation. It exists in subtext, visible enough that many viewers read it clearly, subtle enough that it can be missed or interpreted differently. This ambiguity is both powerful and frustrating. For queer viewers, especially young queer viewers, Will's story resonates deeply. His experience of being different, of loving his friends intensely while watching them move into romantic relationships he doesn't understand or want, of struggling to name what he feels. This is profoundly familiar to many LGBTQ+ people's coming-of-age experiences. The painting scene in Season 4 is particularly loaded. Will creates art for Mike expressing how special and important he is, but gives it through 11, hiding his own feelings behind heterosexual expectation. The scene reads as heartbreaking closeted love. Will's feelings are real and deep, but he can't express them openly, so he channels them through an acceptable narrative. Some viewers argue we shouldn't assume Will is gay without explicit confirmation, that we're projecting modern interpretations onto ambiguous character moments. They're not wrong that explicit confirmation matters for representation. Subtext isn't representation, it's possibility that can be denied. But here's the counterpoint. Queer stories have existed in subtext for decades because explicit representation was impossible. Queer viewers learned to read subtext because that's where our stories were hidden. When we see patterns we recognize, the isolation, the difference, the unspoken feelings, we're not inventing interpretation. We're reading what's there. The Duffer Brothers have said they know Will's story and it will be addressed in Season 5. This suggests intentionality, not accident. Whether Will is explicitly confirmed as gay, whether his feelings for Mike are addressed directly, these are significant storytelling choices that will impact millions of viewers. For many young viewers, Will might be their first representation, or their first disappointment if the subtext remains unconfirmed. The responsibility is significant. Queer kids need stories where people like them exist, are valued, and get happy endings. The debate also reveals how desperately audiences want representation. The passion around Byler comes from years of queer viewers being starved for stories that reflect their experiences. Even ambiguous subtext becomes precious when explicit representation is rare. Whatever happens in Season 5, Will's story matters. Whether he's gay, whether he loves Mike romantically, whether the show addresses this explicitly, these choices will be analyzed for years. The subtext exists. The question is whether the text will honor it. The significance of games, D&D, Dragon's Lair, and escapism as survival. Beyond D&D's role as narrative framework, let's examine how games throughout Stranger Things function as coping mechanisms, training grounds, and metaphors for the larger conflicts these characters face. Games provide structure when reality becomes chaotic. When Will is trapped in the Upside Down, when Eleven is hunted by the government, when the Mind Flayer possesses people, the kids return to games, D&D campaigns, arcade competitions, board games. These aren't distractions from their problems. They're ways of processing trauma through structured play. The arcade in Season 2 becomes a sanctuary, particularly for the boys. Max's arrival and her dominance at Dig Dug challenges the social hierarchy, but more importantly, the arcade represents normal adolescence. High scores, competition, quarters spent on games, these are problems with clear solutions and achievable victories. When fighting interdimensional evil offers only uncertainty and terror, games provide the comfort of rules, levels, and measurable progress. Dragon's Lair appears multiple times, always representing an unbeatable challenge. Dustin finally conquers it, but the victory is bittersweet because he's alone. His friends have moved on to relationships and other concerns. The game that once united them now highlights their growing apart. It's a perfect metaphor for how childhood's simple challenges give way to adolescence's complex ones. Lucas teaching Max to play games isn't just flirtation. It's invitation into community. Games are how the boys communicate, bond, and understand each other. When Max learns their language of games, she's joining their world. The games are cultural currency, social glue, and emotional vocabulary all at once. The strategic thinking required for D&D directly translates to fighting the Upside Down. Mike's campaign planning skills make him a natural leader in real crises. Dustin's puzzle-solving ability from games helps him crack Russian codes. Lucas's tactical thinking in gameplay applies to actual combat planning. The games aren't escapism from reality, they're training for it. There's also the class element. Games are relatively cheap entertainment, a D&D manual, some dice, a few quarters. The kids aren't country club members or taking expensive vacations. Their bonding happens through accessible, democratic play. Games level social hierarchies. Will, from a struggling family, is just as valuable as Mike from a comfortable home. Skill and imagination matter, not money. The adult characters don't understand the games, which creates generational distance but also allows the kids private space. When they discuss strategy using D&D terminology, adults hear nonsense, but they're actually communicating complex ideas. The games provide coded language for discussing real dangers without alarming authority figures. In Season 4, Eddie's Hellfire Club campaign about Vecna becomes eerily prescient. He's literally role-playing a scenario that's about to happen in reality, a powerful lich killing innocent people. Games blur into reality so completely that they become prophetic. This suggests something profound. Maybe games aren't escaping reality but preparing for it, allowing us to rehearse responses to impossible situations in safe contexts. The kids' commitment to games also shows prioritization of imagination and creativity over conformity. In an era valuing athletic achievement and conventional popularity, these kids choose games, fantasy, and imagination. They're outsiders by choice as much as by circumstance, and their outsider status becomes their strength when facing threats that conventional people can't even acknowledge. The transformation of Steve Harrington, from archetype to individual. Steve Harrington's character evolution is perhaps the show's most successful subversion of expectations, and analyzing his transformation reveals how the show handles redemption and growth. Season 1 Steve is a stereotype, the popular jock boyfriend, conventionally attractive, slightly dense, more concerned with his hair than with depth. He's jealous, possessive, and when he thinks Nancy cheated, he slut-shames her publicly. He's positioned as an obstacle, maybe even an antagonist. We've seen this character 1,000 times. Then something remarkable happens. Steve chooses growth. When he realizes he's been wrong about Nancy and Jonathan, he doesn't double down on his bad behavior. He apologizes, makes amends, and literally saves their lives by fighting the Demogorgon. This isn't dramatic character assassination where we learn he was secretly terrible. It's realistic growth where someone recognizes their mistakes and changes. Season 2 Steve becomes Nancy's ex-boyfriend, handling rejection with remarkable grace. He's hurt but not vindictive. He accepts that Nancy loves Jonathan and steps aside without making it ugly. This emotional maturity is rare in teen dramas, which typically milk romantic triangles for maximum drama. Steve subverts this by being genuinely decent. His friendship with Dustin is the show's heart. Steve befriends a middle schooler not to gain anything but because Dustin needs help and Steve is genuinely kind. He gives Dustin dating advice, helps with the Dart crisis, and becomes the protective older brother Dustin needs. Their friendship is reciprocal. Dustin teaches Steve things too, showing him there's value in being nerdy and passionate about interests. Season 3 positions Steve in the humiliating Scoops Ahoy uniform, failing to get into college, forced to work retail. His fall from popular king to ice cream scooper could be played for pure humiliation, but instead it becomes humanizing. Steve without social status is still Steve, still loyal, still brave, still funny. His worth isn't tied to his position in the high school hierarchy. His friendship with Robin adds another layer. She initially dislikes him based on his high school reputation, but working together reveals who he actually is. When she comes out to him and he immediately accepts her without hesitation, it cements Steve as someone who's transcended his original limitations. The popular jock from Season 1 wouldn't have handled that conversation well, but Steve's growth makes him the perfect ally. By Season 4, Steve has become the party's protector and everyone's friend. He's the babysitter, the taxi driver, the guy who jumps into dark water first to check for danger. He's not the smartest or the most powerful, but he's reliable, brave, and present. His weapon is a nail-studded bat, not because it's tactical but because it's what he grabbed in Season 1 and kept using. It's become his signature. Steve's arc explores masculinity free from toxic elements. He's allowed to be strong and protective without being controlling. He can be emotional and vulnerable without losing his identity. He can be rejected romantically and remain friends with his ex. He can fail at conventional success, college, career, while succeeding at what matters, loyalty, courage, friendship. The show also allows Steve to want romantic love without mocking him for it. His conversation with Nancy in Season 4 about his dream of a big family, traveling in an RV with 6 kids. It's sincere, not a joke. Steve wants conventional domestic happiness, and that's portrayed as valid and sweet, not as weakness or foolishness. Steve Harrington proves that people aren't their worst moments, that growth is possible, and that choosing to be better matters more than natural ability or social status. He transformed from stereotype into one of the show's most beloved characters not through dramatic revelation, but through consistent small choices to be kind, brave, and decent. His probable death in Season 5, heavily foreshadowed, will devastate fans precisely because his arc has been so complete. He started as someone we didn't care about and became someone we can't imagine losing. That's masterful character development. Susie, belief, faith, and love across distance. Susie Bingham, Dustin's girlfriend who appears briefly at the end of Season 3 and more substantially in Season 4, represents themes of faith, belief, and the validation of dismissed truths. Throughout Season 3, no one believes Dustin has a girlfriend. The party thinks he made her up. Steve is skeptical. Even Erica mocks him. Dustin's insistence that Susie exists despite universal doubt mirrors the larger theme, insisting on truth when everyone says you're crazy. Susie's existence validates Dustin completely. She's real. She's brilliant. She shares his interests. She loves him genuinely. Everyone was wrong to doubt him. This parallels the show's constant theme of kids telling the truth about impossible things while adults refuse to believe. The never-ending story duet is simultaneously silly and profound. In the middle of a life-or-death crisis, with the fate of the world hanging in balance, Dustin and Susie sing a movie theme song because she won't give him Planck's constant without it. It's absurd, it's adorable, and it's exactly what the show does. Finds humanity in apocalypse, insists on joy even in darkness. Their relationship is pure in a way others aren't. They met at summer camp, bonded over science and interests, maintain their connection through radio communication across distance. They're geeks who found each other, who don't have to pretend to be cooler or different. They can be exactly who they are. Obsessed with science, into fantasy, singing Broadway songs, and love each other for it. Susie's Mormon faith adds interesting dimension. She's religious in a show where science and supernatural elements dominate. Her faith doesn't conflict with her scientific knowledge. She can believe in God and understand quantum physics. She represents the idea that spirituality and rationality aren't opposites. In Season 4, when Dustin contacts her for help again, she immediately assists despite risks. She hacks government systems, lies to her parents, mobilizes her siblings into a complex operation. She doesn't question whether Dustin's crisis is real. She trusts him completely. That faith is reciprocal. They believe in each other absolutely. The distance in their relationship is significant. They can't see each other regularly, can't have normal dates, maintain connection through technology and commitment. This mirrors the show's larger themes about connection persisting across impossible distances. Joyce reaching Will through dimensions, the party maintaining friendship despite separation, love surviving even death. Susie also represents that heroism exists in normal kids everywhere, not just in Hawkins. She's in Utah, living a relatively normal life, but when called upon, she's just as brave and capable as anyone fighting monsters directly. The crisis isn't localized to Hawkins in its impact. It requires heroes from everywhere. Their relationship is also genuinely healthy. They communicate, support each other's interests, maintain boundaries. She won't help without the song because she wants connection, not just utility, and genuinely enjoy each other. In a show with complicated romances full of lies and drama, Dustin and Susie's relationship is refreshingly functional. The newspaper and investigative journalism. Truth-seeking as heroism. Nancy's work on the school newspaper and later in professional journalism represents truth-seeking as its own form of heroism, and the show's commentary on media, truth, and institutional resistance to uncomfortable facts. Nancy joins the newspaper initially to have something impressive for college applications, but it becomes genuine passion. She cares about truth, about exposing what's hidden, about giving voice to stories that matter. When Barb dies and is dismissed as a runaway, Nancy can't accept the lie. Journalism becomes her weapon. Her partnership with Jonathan to expose Hawkins' lab in Season 2 shows how journalism functions when institutions are corrupt. They can't go to the police, compromised, can't trust the government, literally the perpetrator, can't rely on adults, who won't believe them. They go to Murray, a disgraced journalist, who helps them craft a story that's believable enough to spark investigation while hiding the unbelievable truth. This exposes journalism's compromise. Sometimes the whole truth is too bizarre to publish. Nancy and Jonathan have evidence of a girl with psychic powers, a parallel dimension, and government experiments on children. But publishing that would make them look insane and bury the story. So they leak a simplified version, chemical leaks, negligence, cover-ups that people can accept. Season 3 shows Nancy as an intern at the Hawkins Post, where she faces sexism, dismissal, and institutional resistance to investigating real stories. Her male colleagues mock her. Her boss patronizes her. And when she uncovers evidence of rat behavior, anomalies connected to the Mind Flayer, everyone dismisses her concerns as hysteria. Nancy's response is to investigate anyway. She and Jonathan pursue the truth without institutional support, without editors backing them, using journalism skills for their own investigation. When the story becomes undeniable and dangerous, the journalists who dismissed her suddenly want credit. Nancy learns that truth-seeking often happens despite institutions, not because of them. The newspaper represents the Fourth Estate's theoretical function, holding power accountable, investigating uncomfortable truths, giving voice to the voiceless. But the show also shows journalism's failures, the willingness to dismiss women and young people, the resistance to stories that challenge comfortable narratives, the institutional cowardice that avoids conflict with power. Nancy's determination to investigate despite these obstacles makes her a particular kind of hero. She doesn't have superpowers, but she has persistence, intelligence, and moral conviction that truth matters. When she pursues stories others won't touch, when she risks her safety to expose wrongdoing, she's fighting evil through information warfare. The show also explores how truth can be suppressed. Even when Nancy exposes Hawkins' lab, the story is contained, spun, and eventually buried. Government cover-ups succeed not through dramatic conspiracies but through bureaucratic obfuscation, discrediting witnesses, and controlling narratives. Real journalism struggles against this machinery. Nancy's career ambitions, wanting to be a serious investigative journalist, show someone who's found meaningful purpose from tragedy. Barb's death wasn't pointless if it motivated Nancy to spend her life exposing truth and seeking justice. It's not redemption, Barb is still dead, but its purpose grown from grief. The parallel between journalism and the party's investigations is clear. Both involve gathering evidence, testing theories, pursuing truth despite danger and skepticism. Nancy applies journalistic methodology to supernatural mysteries. The kids apply detective work to their investigations. Truth-seeking takes many forms, but it's always about refusing to accept comfortable lies. In an era of fake news claims and institutional media distrust, Nancy represents idealistic journalism, pursuing truth for its own sake, willing to challenge power, resistant to spin and propaganda. She's not naive about journalism's flaws, but she believes in its potential to matter. The Buyer's House, poverty, instability, and resilience. The buyer's home is small, older, not well maintained. Joyce works multiple jobs but still struggles to pay bills. The walls are thin, the Christmas lights stay up too long, the furniture is worn. This isn't aesthetic choice, it's economic reality. The buyers are working poor and it shows. This economic vulnerability matters. When Will disappears, Joyce can't hire private investigators or offer reward money. When she needs to miss work to search for him, she risks losing her job. When she covers her house in Christmas lights and tears apart the wall, she's destroying property she can't afford to repair. Poverty makes everything harder, including fighting supernatural evil. Jonathan has adult responsibilities as a teenager. He helps with bills, takes care of Will, tries to protect his mother from stress. He can't just be a kid, he's a co-parent by necessity. His camera is his most valuable possession, and he uses it to try to create a future beyond Hawkins. The pressure on him is immense. The house's instability mirrors the family's emotional state. Joyce is barely holding together, Jonathan is parentified, Will is struggling with identity and trauma. The home isn't a stable sanctuary. It's a fragile shelter constantly under threat, from bills, from supernatural forces, from institutional powers. When government agents search the house in Season 1, they treat it with casual contempt. They destroy property, intimidate the family, and assume compliance. Richer families might have lawyers or political connections to push back. The buyers have nothing, and the agents know it. Poverty removes the buffer between individuals and institutional power. The house being located on the edge of town matters too. They're literally and metaphorically marginal, not quite part of Hawkins' more prosperous center, geographically isolated, easy to overlook. When Will is taken, geographic isolation delays discovery. When Joyce needs help, neighbors aren't close by. But the house also represents resilience. Joyce fights from this modest home using Christmas lights and a paint can phone. She doesn't need fancy equipment to refuse to give up. The house becomes command center for supernatural resistance, proving that heroism isn't about resources. It's about determination. The show treats the buyer's poverty with respect. It's not played for mockery or pity. Their economic struggle is context, affecting their options and vulnerabilities, but not defining their worth. Joyce is diminished by some characters for being poor, crazy Joyce, but the show validates her completely. She was right about everything. Moving to California represents both escape and loss. They leave Hawkins to start fresh, to build stability away from trauma and supernatural threats. But they also leave community, support systems, and the only home they know. Economic migration, leaving for opportunity, means losing what little stability poverty allowed. The new house in California is better materially but wrong emotionally. It's anonymous suburbia, Nowheresville, a place without character or connection. The modest Hawkins house, for all its flaws, was home. The birth of Vecna. Every monster has an origin. And in Stranger Things, the greatest monster of them all did not come from another dimension. He was born human. Long before the Upside Down began bleeding into Hawkins, before gates were torn open, before the Mind Flayer cast its shadow, there was a boy who believed the world itself was broken. This is the story of Vecna. In the late 1950s, the Creel family moved into a quiet house on Cherry Lane in Hawkins, Indiana. To the rest of the town, it was just another family trying to start fresh. But their son, Henry Creel, was different. From the moment he arrived, Henry sensed things other people could not. He heard thoughts echo beneath polite conversations. He saw hypocrisy hiding behind smiles. Where others saw neighbors and routines, Henry saw patterns, rules designed to limit, punish, and control. And Henry hated them. He quickly realized he was not like everyone else. He could move objects without touching them. He could slip into people's minds, replay their memories, and expose their guilt. His powers did not frighten him. They validated what he already believed, that he was superior. Henry began to see himself as a predator among prey. Time, morality, and society were illusions meant to keep the weak obedient. And those who enforced those illusions deserved punishment. His first victims were the people closest to him. Henry tormented his family with visions and fear, especially his mother, Virginia, who sensed the darkness growing inside her son. When she tried to seek medical help, Henry interpreted it as betrayal. One night he snapped. Using his full power, Henry crushed the minds of his mother and younger sister. The effort drained him completely, leaving him unconscious. When authorities arrived, only one suspect remained. Victor Creel was arrested and sent to Penhast Asylum, blamed for murders his son had committed. Henry survived, and someone was watching. Henry was taken to Hawkins National Laboratory, where Dr. Martin Brenner recognized both his power and his danger. Rather than destroy him, Brenner chose to control him. A suppression device was implanted at the base of Henry's neck, dampening his abilities and stripping him of freedom. His name was taken from him. His childhood ended. Inside the lab, Henry became the blueprint. Brenner spent years attempting to recreate Henry's abilities, experimenting on other children. They were numbered, trained, tested, and weaponized. Among them was a young girl who would later be known as 11. Henry watched from the shadows. He saw the children struggle with powers they barely understood. To him, they were incomplete, lesser reflections of what he was meant to be. But 11 was different. She was stronger than the rest. And Henry saw in her an opportunity. Disguising himself as a harmless orderly, Henry gained 11's trust. He spoke to her of escape, of freedom, of a world beyond Brenner's control. Slowly, carefully, he convinced her that the chip in his neck was the only thing standing in the way. When 11 removed it, Henry became whole again. The lab never stood a chance. Henry slaughtered nearly everyone inside Hawkins' lab, children and staff alike, unleashing years of suppressed rage in a single night of bloodshed. When he offered 11 a place at his side, he believed she would understand him. She refused, and in her fear and defiance, 11 did the impossible. She opened a tear in reality. Henry was not killed. He was cast into another world. The dimension that would become known as the Upside Down tore his body apart and rebuilt it. Lightning scorched him. The air poisoned him. The environment stripped away what little humanity remained. This was not a punishment. It was a transformation. Henry embraced the pain. He abandoned his name. And from the ruins of his former self, Vecna was born. In this new world, Vecna discovered creatures that existed only to consume. Rather than fear them, he dominated them. With his mind, he bent the ecosystem to his will, shaping the Mind Flayer itself into an extension of his hatred and philosophy. Vecna imposed order on chaos. He reshaped the Upside Down into a dark reflection of Hawkins, frozen in time, built from memory, obsession, and rage. And as he explored his power, he learned something crucial. Pain connects people. Trauma weakens them. And guilt leaves doors open. Years later, Vecna reached back into Hawkins. He did not attack armies or governments. He hunted the vulnerable, teenagers burdened by grief, shame, and fear. Through visions and hallucinations, he forced his victims to relive their worst moments, feeding on their suffering. When he killed, he did more than take lives. Each death tore open a new gate. Piece by piece, Vecna weakened the barrier between worlds, preparing Hawkins for transformation. His goal was never chaos for its own sake, it was evolution. A world without weakness. A world shaped by his design. Standing against him was 11, the only person who had ever truly challenged him. Where Vecna believed pain created strength, 11 proved that connection could do the same. Their conflict was no longer just personal. It was philosophical. Vecna is not simply another monster from the Upside Down. He is the architect behind everything, the gates, the creatures, the corruption of Hawkins itself. He is the reminder that the most terrifying evil does not come from another world, but from what happens when power grows without empathy. Vecna was once a child who saw the flaws in humanity, and decided the world deserved to suffer for them. Memory, trauma, and the Nina Project. Therapeutic torture. The Nina Project in Season 4, using immersive memory recreation to restore 11's powers, deserves deep analysis as exploration of how trauma functions, whether it can be weaponized therapeutically, and the ethics of forced remembering. Elle lost her powers after the Battle of Starcourt, seemingly because of physical trauma, the Mind Flayer's attack, but actually because of psychological trauma. Her powers are tied to her emotional state, her sense of identity, and her willingness to access rage and fear. When she's damaged psychologically, the powers shut down. Not injury but protection, her psyche preventing her from accessing what hurt her. Owens believes the powers can be restored by forcing Elle to relive her trauma, specifically the day she banished Henry Creel to the Upside Down. She's repressed this memory because it's too painful. She killed, or tried to kill, the first test subject, someone who was kind to her before revealing his monstrosity. The Nina Project isn't just memory recovery. It's deliberate re-traumatization in pursuit of functionality. This raises profound ethical questions. Is it acceptable to cause psychological harm for strategic benefit? Owens genuinely believes restoring El's powers is necessary to save the world. He's utilitarian, cause suffering now to prevent greater suffering later. But El's consent is compromised. She wants to help her friends, but does she understand what she's agreeing to? The project uses a sophisticated sensory deprivation tank combined with chemical enhancement to drop El into memory so completely that she relives it rather than remembers it. She's not watching her past. She's experiencing it again, feeling everything she felt as a child. This is immersive trauma, weaponized therapeutics. What the show reveals is that El's powers came from trauma in the first place. Brenner's experiments were designed to push children past their psychological limits, accessing abilities through inflicting pain and fear. El's power source is literally traumatic experience. The Nina Project just continues this pattern, more trauma to restore power that came from trauma in the first place. The revelation about the Rainbow Room massacre recontextualizes everything. El didn't open the gate by accident. She banished Henry Creel after he massacred the other test subjects and tried to recruit her. Her heroic moment was repressed because it was too terrible to hold. She saved Brenner and prevented greater catastrophe, but the cost was watching her siblings die and using her power to exile someone to another dimension. This memory unlocking is traumatic but also clarifying. El discovers she wasn't Brenner's weapon. She was his shield. She fought one Henry Vecna before, and she can do it again. The trauma that took her powers, when fully remembered and processed, becomes the source of their restoration. She has to own her past completely, the terrible and the heroic, to access her full self. But we should question whether this is therapeutic or simply exploitation. Real trauma therapy emphasizes patient control, careful pacing, and processing at the survivor's speed. The Nina Project is forced, rushed, and designed to serve strategic rather than therapeutic goals. Owens might believe he's helping, but he's using therapeutic language to justify using El as a weapon again. The show doesn't fully condemn or endorse this. It presents the moral complexity honestly. El needs her powers, the world needs her abilities, but the cost is re-traumatizing a teenager who's already suffered enormously. There's no clean answer. What saves this from being pure exploitation is El's agency. She chooses to continue, she processes the memories on her own terms ultimately, and she emerges not just with restored powers but with deeper self-understanding. She owns her history, Brenner's victim, Henry's opponent, Jane Hopper, friend, daughter, hero, all of it. The Nina Project represents the show's sophisticated handling of trauma. You can't simply forget or suppress traumatic experience. It shapes you regardless. Full integration requires facing what happened, holding all of it, the terrible and the powerful. Healing isn't forgetting. It's remembering completely and surviving the remembering. How the story ends. To finish our exploration of Stranger Things, and with the ending so near, rest now as we explore one possible ending and the finale of Stranger Things as we know it. The last night in Hawkins. Hawkins does not end in fire. It ends in silence. The town that once echoed with bike tires on pavement and the low hum of fluorescent lights now stands cracked and hollow. Streets are split open like wounds. Red lightning flickers across the sky, illuminating houses that have already been abandoned by hope. The Upside Down is no longer somewhere else. It is here. The barrier between worlds has thinned to almost nothing, and Hawkins has become the center of it all, the place where two realities are about to collapse into one. And at the heart of that collapse stands Vecna. Vecna does not rush his victory. He never has. From the ruins of Hawkins, he watches the town the same way he once watched his family. Quietly, patiently, convinced that the end is inevitable. The gates remain open, bleeding spores and shadow into the streets. Creatures roam freely now, no longer needing permission to cross. The Mind Flayer moves like a living storm above the town, not as a ruler, but as an extension of Vecna's will. To Vecna, this is not conquest. It is correction. Humanity, he believes, has finally been stripped of its illusions. Time has broken. Order has failed. All that remains is survival, and survival belongs to the strong. But Vecna has underestimated one thing. Hawkins has always fought back. Not everyone fled the town. In the ruins of the old Wheeler house, a small group remains. They are older now, scarred. No longer children pretending to be heroes. They are veterans of a war no one else remembers. 11 sits apart from the others, staring at her hands. Her powers come and go unpredictably now. Stronger in bursts, weaker in moments when she needs them most. The strain of holding the gates at bay has taken its toll. Mike stays close, grounding her when her thoughts spiral. Not with speeches or declarations, just presence. The kind Vecna never understood. Dustin and Lucas work through maps and radio equipment, trying to track disturbances in the town's power grid. Where Vecna brings chaos, patterns still exist. Max survives, but she is changed. She sees things now, feels the upside down even when she is awake. And in those moments, she senses something the others cannot. Vecna is afraid. Henry Creel believed he shed his humanity in the upside down. He was wrong. Max understands this better than anyone. When Vecna invaded her mind, he did not just show her fear. He showed her himself. Not the god he pretends to be, but the boy he still is beneath the scars and ideology. Vecna feeds on trauma, but he is also trapped by it. He is still the child in the Creel house. Still the son who wanted the world to make sense. Still the monster who never learned how to be anything else. And that is the weakness. 11 knows she cannot defeat Vecna by force alone. Every time she meets him head-on, the result is the same. Destruction without resolution. Vecna thrives on violence. He expects it. He welcomes it. So 11 makes a different choice. Instead of closing the gates from the outside, she opens herself to the upside down completely, for the last time. She does not fight Vecna's world. She enters it. Her body collapses in Hawkins as her mind crosses over, slipping into the psychic landscape Vecna has ruled for decades. And there, she finds him. The final confrontation does not take place in Hawkins or the Upside Down. It happens somewhere in between. A fractured memory space where the Creel house stands intact, untouched by decay. The grandfather clock ticks loudly, echoing through empty halls. Vecna waits for her. Not as a monster but as Henry. For the first time, he speaks without anger. He tells 11 that she cannot win. That the world will always break. That people will always hurt each other. He insists that he is merely the natural conclusion of humanity's flaws. 11 does not argue. She agrees. And that terrifies him. 11 tells Henry that the world is broken. That people fail. That pain is real. But she tells him something else, too. Pain is not the end of the story. She shows him memories, not of violence, but of connection. Mike standing in the rain. Dustin laughing through tears. Lucas refusing to let Max go. Moments Vecna dismissed as weakness. Henry recoils. Because for the first time, he understands what he never had. Not power. Choice. Vecna lashes out, tearing the memory space apart. The Creel house fractures. Time collapses in on itself. 11 knows what she has to do. She cannot kill Vecna, but she can end him. Using every ounce of strength she has left, 11 binds Vecna to the Upside Down completely, severing his connection to Hawkins forever. But the cost is absolute. She must stay with him. If Vecna is the lock, she becomes the key. As the gates begin to close across Hawkins, 11's physical body fades. Mike feels it. So does everyone else. The sky clears. The spores vanish. The creatures collapse where they stand, disconnected from the mind that controlled them. Hawkins survives. But it is changed. The town never fully recovers. Not economically, not emotionally. Some scars remain visible. Others live quietly beneath the surface. The government covers what it can. The rest becomes legend. Years pass. Mike becomes a writer, telling stories that feel strangely familiar to those who read them. Dustin teaches. Lucas stays close to home. Max learns how to live with the echoes in her mind. They do not move on. They move forward. And every year, on the same night, they return to Hawkins. They remember the girl who saved them. Somewhere, deep in the darkness between worlds, a small pocket of light remains. Eleven sits alone, but she is not afraid. Vecna is silent now, powerless without a world to corrupt. His reign ends not in domination, but containment. The Upside Down no longer spreads. It sleeps. And in the quiet town of Hawkins, Indiana, life continues. Fragile, imperfect, and worth saving. Because in the end, Stranger Things was never about monsters. It was about the people who stood together when the world broke. That brings us to the end of our deep dive into Stranger Things, and for now our exploration of Hawkins and the Upside Down. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Sleep well.